As a child, growing up in the city of Hyderabad in south of India, we lived very close to a railway track. Each evening, my friends and I would run along the tracks, wave to passengers, and occasionally flatten pennies. But on 9th March 1989, I, as a dejected, depressed individual, walked onto the tracks and sat down to end my life. The jagged stones poked into my skin. The distant rumble grew from a faint and slowly clear sound. And my heart was beating faster and faster. Adversity comes in many forms. For a single mother, it could be a financial adversity. For some who had a grim prognosis, it could be health, physical. For some who had a relational breakdown, an emotional adversity. But no matter which form of adversity we get knocked by, occasionally, we end up with one choice. Do we surrender and roll over? Or do we surmount? The World Health Organization said that every year, many people are driven to suicide when they hit rock bottom. There are, of course, some people who have mental health issues, but predominantly, adversity seems to be a strong driver for pushing people to the dead end. In fact, by the time this talk is over, about 25 people in the USA alone would have attempted suicide. So why is it that some people get crushed by adversity and some people have this amazing ability to crush adversity? Why is it adversity breaks some people and some people go on to break records? You see, I wasn't always this good looking. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, the nicknames that I grew up were called Kalia, which means, hey, black-skinned person, or dark-complexioned person. And so for years, I used this product called Fair and Lovely, a face whitening cream. I continue to do that even now, no results yet. Another name that I grew up with was called Alter, because for years, between the time I was 12 and 18, my family were mostly living on hand-me-down clothes, and my pants had to be altered, so that became a pet name for many of my friends to bully me. Hey, Alter, do you want to play with us? Hey, Kalia, do you want to play with us? This name calling and bullying really hurt me. But it wasn't just that bullying that ostracized me. Between the time I was 12 and 18 and that point where I was really hitting rock bottom, my family, due to a series of unfortunate circumstances, went through a strong time of upheaval. The four siblings, I being the oldest, and my parents, were in this big city of Hyderabad with my dad having just lost his reasonably well-paying job. Can you imagine living in a big city where you have to fend for yourself, 6 individuals with no money? For days, my siblings and I would survive only on water. We were evicted from our rental homes as long as we were able to stay, but as soon as we were not able to, we were evicted. The 4 of us would be ejected from schools repeatedly because our only hope of survival in India was getting education. My family's dreams of coming from a small village into the big city were dashed as soon as my dad's job left, and we were really in a pit of despair. So over a period of 5 years, I grew from being that 12-year-old to a gawky teenager, facing this bullying, humiliation, frustration, this inability to look at a future that's not bright at all. I went off the guardrails and ended up on the tracks. Just in the nick of time, 3 strangers who were apparently following me came rushing, forced me out of harm's way, gently chided me along the way and brought me and handed me to my parents. My parents were devastated. But from that inward depression, I went to the other extreme of outward rage. I got bitter and angry towards everybody around me. I then gradually moved into a life of violence. At the Polytechnic I was enrolled, I started beating up people for money, and soon I developed a split personality and made a reputation for being a gangster in student politics. In fact, I did some stuff that I'm not very proud to put on my LinkedIn profile. It was around that duplicitous time that a friend of mine grabbed me and took me to a youth camp. That is where I had my epiphany. I took a hard look at my life and said, the spiral of violence is going to kill me someday and destroy my family. And that moment I prayed and I said, God, if you can help me overcome these inner demons, I will get on the narrow path. I will straighten up and face these external giants that were closing in on us. So I wanted to offer you 3 tools today. The first tool is you've got to get back your emotional equilibrium when you're knocked out. You get your emotional equilibrium back, you get your locus of control back when you realize that there are some things you can control and there are some things that you cannot control. That day, I decided that this emotional battle is going to be right in my control. I turned around and I made peace with myself. But it wasn't easy. I had to let go of my bitterness, anger, rage. It's a difficult, tumultuous path. I went to people whom I had wronged, offended, hurt, beaten up, stolen from, sought forgiveness. Where possible, paid restitution and set right a whole lot of wrongs. But the biggest barrier I had to breach was with my father. In a culture where even staring back defiantly spells the death of a relationship, my father and I had some real bad blood. So too broken and too shy to have this awkward conversation verbally, I wrote a letter and I mailed it to my dad to my own house. 3 days later, when I walked into the house, my dad just hugged me. And I cried inconsolably. That day, I made a promise to them and I said, I will no longer fight you. I will fight along with you and we'll all get better. Locus of control came back to me when I took responsibility and I started becoming strong emotionally. When life knocks you over, the first strength you need to demonstrate is your locus of control, your ability to discover what's in your control and what's not in your control, and then make those choices. From being on suicide watch, 5 years later, I went on to volunteer as a young volunteer at a suicide prevention center. The arc of my story had come a long way. The second tool I wanted to share with you is, in addition to this emotional fortitude, you need to develop a lot of intellectual horsepower. What do I mean by that? I'm glad you asked. Anytime you want to battle or combat adversity, you need to be powered by aspirations. Dreams are the fuel of anyone who's knocked over. When you have nothing else to look forward to, it's the dreams that will propel you and make you rise. You see, after I made peace with my family, I realized that the only way my family would get out of the spiral of poverty was through education. So I did my best to do odd jobs and support my mom, who was till then waging a lone battle, started teaching younger kids, doing odd jobs, finally landed a job as a door-to-door salesman. I was supporting my folks, my younger sisters and my younger brother got into high school, got into college. Over a period of long time, they were getting into a solid footing. Our family finally had some semblance of dignity and some basic living in the big city. But there was one problem. I was feeling left out because my friends and my colleagues were all at a launch pad lifting off into great careers. I was frustrated. As a result, I was feeling very miserable and I started getting very restless. Adversity barred me from college, but could not stop me from learning. It was then I decided that I have to commit myself to a life of self-learning. learning. I went to a nearby club called the Young Orators Club and got exposed to these fantastic English-speaking young people, and I aspired and dreamed to be like them. I went to a British library whose membership I could not afford, but they opened their reference section to the general public, and I devoured the thesauri and all the resource material there. In fact, because much of my English speaking is self-taught, I awkwardly landed up in some situation. For example, where I should have used the word exotic, I ended up using the word erotic. And the word esoteric is still hidden from me. I competed with about 19,000 students for a seat in a very competitive MBA, but I didn't know how I was going to do it because I had to work full-time to support my family because I was on this treadmill, and if I get off the treadmill, will be history repeating ourselves, but I decided that there was no way I was going to sacrifice my aspirations and my intellectual horsepower. So, spread over a 7-year period, I acquired a bachelor's degree, 3-year bachelor degree, 2 years full-time MBA, and a 2 years full-time degree in journalism. In fact, so enthusiastic was my effort in journalism, out of the 5 gold medals at stake at the university, I had won 4 of them for topping the university. In fact, I missed the 5th one by 1 point, and that stung me more. So, emotional fortitude helps you recover and regain your locus of control. Intellectual horsepower powers your aspirations in the face of adversity. And here's the third and final tool I want to share with you through my story. Vitality, physical energy will deliver you victory when adversity knocks you down. Between a setback and a comeback, there is this fight back. And the only way you can do a fight back is through your physical energy. It was around this time my life was getting a sense of respect, and from being that skinny kid I was bullied, I started working out at the gym, and if I didn't like my shirt, I would have flexed right now, these guns. But it was around that time that physical confidence started coming back, and my friends started teasing me and saying, "Hey, Sunil, you're good-looking from far, but far from good-looking," and so on and so forth. My life suddenly started looking upbeat. There was sunshine around the corner, but I had no idea there was another crisis lurking. It was one evening I woke up to the silhouettes and the strange smell of a hospital ward, and the silhouettes were of my sisters, my mother, and my younger brother. They told me, as they started speaking, I recalled that the last memory I had was that I was speeding down the highway on my motorbike after a sales call. Apparently, I was involved in an accident, and they rushed me to the hospital and surgically removed a huge piece, about 8 inches, of my right knee downwards. And then I looked at myself and I was truly shocked. The prognosis was grim. They said, forget sports. For the rest of his life, he will have to use a cane because the load-bearing capacity of his right knee is literally come down to 20 or 30% of what a normal leg would be. For someone who loved cricket, those sliding stops and those reflex catches and fielding and running around, I was gutted. Just imagine something precious being taken away from you just when you are recovering after a series of blows. I felt this is not happening. But true champions, like Viktor Frankl said, when you're no longer able to change the circumstances, you'll be forced to change yourself. That came home. Instead of asking, God, why me? I said, now it's up to me. After a series of denials and depression cycles and a lot of gaining weight and completely getting out of cycle, then I said, I need to take baby steps to get back and see if I can do anything about this prognosis. So they signed me up for physiotherapy a third-degree torture. You know, they tie your leg into a sling and use a heavy-duty rope and pull it to improve your flexibility. If that is not hell, I don't know what else is. I set myself 3 quick goals. I said, first, I need to be able to stand up on my feet, independent, chuck away the cane, and the third goal was, I need to start walking back like a cool dude. Because every time I was limping, young, beautiful ladies would cast pitiful glares at me, and I couldn't take that. I said, this is not happening. To cut a long story short, I was able to accomplish the 2 goals of standing and throwing away the cane. The cool dude part is still coming. And over a 7-year span since 2010, I discovered a very, very unique developmental hobby called marathon running. And I run the toughest marathons in the world, including New York City and Boston Marathon. Here's what you can take away from these 3 tools. The next time life hits you with any setback, you have a choice: succumb, surrender, or surmount. So, when I say these 3 phrases, indulge me and play along with me. I will fight. I will rise. I will overcome. Thank you.